What if I told you that the greatest threat to your future isn't a virus, it isn't climate change, and it isn't even AI? What if the greatest threat is a number? $34 trillion. That is the current national debt of the United States. It is a number so vast it defies human comprehension. If you counted $1 every second, it would take you over 1,000,000 years to reach 34 trillion. Every day, politicians and mainstream economists get on television and tell you that this number doesn't matter. They tell you we owe it to ourselves. They tell you that as long as the economy grows, the debt is manageable. They tell you that the system is stable. They are lying to you. They are lying because the alternative is to admit a terrifying truth that has defined the rise and fall of empires for 5,000 years. When a superpower accumulates a level of debt that can never mathematically be repaid, there are only two ways out. There are only two mechanisms history provides to clear the ledger. The first is a slow, agonizing death by hyperinflation, destroying the currency to make the debt worthless. The second is faster, it is violent, and it is the preferred method of dying empires clutching onto power. The second way out is war. Today, we are going to look at the blood tax. We are going to examine the historical cycle that proves when the spreadsheets turn irredeemably red. The only way global elites know how to reset the system is with a global conflict. Welcome to the Financial Historian. Let's look at the reality they don't want you to see. To understand why war is the ultimate economic reset, you first have to understand the true nature of sovereign debt at the end of an empire's life cycle. In the early stages of an empire like America after World War II, or Britain in the 1800s, debt is a tool for growth. You borrow to build infrastructure, to fund innovation, to expand trade. The return on investment is higher than the cost of borrowing. The system works. But empires, inevitably, become bloated, corrupt, and decadent. They stop producing and start consuming. They stop innovating and start financializing. We saw this shift dramatically after 1971 when the US detached the dollar from gold. Suddenly, the restraint was gone. The debt exploded, not to build interstate highways or go to the moon, but to fund massive welfare states, endless overseas interventions, and corporate bailouts. We have now reached the mathematical endgame. The interest payments on US debt are now higher than the entire defense budget. We are borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money we already borrowed. In finance, this is called a Ponzi scheme. And like all Ponzi schemes, it requires an ever-increasing injection of new capital to keep the illusion alive. But what happens when the world stops buying your debt? What happens when the BRICS nations or China decide they no longer want to hold the IOUs of a declining power? The facade cracks. The state faces an existential crisis. It cannot tax its citizens enough to fill the hole. And printing enough money to fill it would cause instant Weimar-style hyperinflation, leading to domestic revolution. The ruling class is trapped. And a trapped animal is dangerous. History shows us that when a hegemon cannot solve its financial problems with finance, it solves them with force. We have seen this movie before. The clearest parallel to America today is the British Empire in the first half of the 20th century. Before 1914, the British pound sterling was the world reserve currency. London was the center of global finance. The sun never set on the British Empire. But beneath the surface, the rot had set in. Britain was being outproduced by rising powers like Germany and the United States. Then came World War I. To fight this massive industrial war, Britain had to borrow astronomical sums of money. They liquidated centuries of accumulated wealth in 4 short years. By the end of the war, the world's great creditor had become a massive debtor, primarily to the United States. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, Britain tried to manage this crushing debt burden. They tried austerity, crushing their working class. They tried returning to the gold standard, which decimated their export industry. Nothing worked. The debt was a millstone around the neck of the empire, causing social unrest and economic stagnation. By the late 1930s, Britain was financially insolvent and facing a renewed challenge from Germany. And then the solution arrived, World War II. Now, I am not suggesting that the British elite engineered World War II solely to fix their balance sheet. History is complex. But we must look at the economic result of that war. The war provided the perfect justification for the government to seize total control of the economy. Financial orthodoxy was thrown out the window. Debt ceilings became meaningless. The entire nation was mobilized. Most importantly, the war forced the ultimate Great Reset. Under the pressure of total war, Britain was forced to sign the Lend-Lease Agreement with the US, effectively selling off its remaining geopolitical assets for supplies. The war ended the British Empire as a financial superpower. The old debts became irrelevant, because a new system was built on the ashes of the old one. The 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement established the US dollar as the new king, replacing the exhausted pound sterling. The war didn't pay off Britain's debt. It obliterated the system in which that debt existed. It was a bankruptcy restructuring presided over by generals and tanks instead of judges and lawyers. So how does this blood tax mechanism work today? How does a major war solve a $34 trillion debt problem? It works in three distinct ways. First, war is the ultimate distraction and justification for financial repression. When the nation's survival is supposedly at stake, nobody cares about the budget deficit. The central bank is unleashed to print whatever is necessary to fund the war machine. This creates massive inflation, yes. But in a war economy, the government controls prices, wages, and production. They can hide the inflation through rationing and controls, while paying back their old, fixed-rate debts with newly printed, devalued currency. It's a stealth default on bondholders. Second, large-scale kinetic warfare destroys capital. It sounds perverse, but from the perspective of the economic cycle, destruction is a stimulus. If you bomb a city, you have to rebuild it. If you blow up $1 billion worth of munitions, you have to manufacture more. War mobilizes the entire industrial base, soaking up unemployment and creating a temporary, artificial boom. It kicks the can down the road, masking the underlying insolvency with the smoke of industry and destruction. And third, and most importantly, the victor gets to rewrite the rules. If the current global financial order, the rules-based international order led by the US dollar, is failing, a global conflict allows the winner to dictate the terms of the new order. If the US wins a major conflict against a peer rival like China or Russia, it could theoretically force a restructuring of global finance that reconsolidates its power, perhaps seizing foreign assets or forcing the adoption of a new controllable digital currency system. If it loses, the debt becomes moot anyway as the empire collapses and a new hegemon takes over. Either way, the crushing burden of the current debt structure is resolved through violence. The ledger is cleared with blood. Bring this back to right now. Look at the board. We have a hegemon, the United States, with unpayable debts, a de-industrialized economy, and internal social fracturing. We have rising challengers, China, Russia, the BRICS bloc, who are actively trying to de-dollarize and build an alternative financial system. They are refusing to keep funding the American Ponzi scheme. The economic pressure inside the system is reaching a boiling point. The Federal Reserve is trapped between hyperinflation and causing a second Great Depression. Is it any coincidence that at this exact moment of maximum financial vulnerability, geopolitical tensions are higher than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis? We are being told these conflicts are about democracy, or borders, or ancient feuds, and on the surface they are. But dig deeper. Follow the money. A major war allows the US government to do things that are politically impossible in peacetime. It allows for the implementation of a central bank digital currency under the guise of national security. It allows for the clamping down on domestic dissent. And it provides the only plausible off-ramp for the $34 trillion debt bubble. They won't tell you they are taking you to war to erase their financial mismanagement. They will tell you it's to protect freedom. Just like they told the British people in 1914. Just like they told the Romans before them. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The cycle of empire is as predictable as the tides. Debt leads to decadence. Decadence leads to decline. And decline leads to conflict. We are living through the fourth major turning of the modern era. The credit cycle that began in 1945 is ending. The debt cannot be paid. The elites know this. They are not preparing for a soft landing. They are preparing for the Great Reset. And historically, the easiest button to push to initiate that reset is the one labeled war. The blood tax is coming due. The only question is, who is going to pay it? If you want to understand the mechanics behind the headlines and see the patterns others miss, subscribe to the channel. Class is dismissed.